Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Allison Weiss, and I'm the Associate Director of Corporate and Executive Education at the Brown School of Professional Studies. These free master classes are a series that is designed to bring Brown's learnings straight to you at home and to make them as accessible as possible. This is a regular series that we do on the hottest topics. And I'm really excited about today's on leading with agility in the age of AI. I have a little bit of an introduction to the School of Professional Studies and our AI programs, and then I'm going to be very excited to introduce and hand things over to our faculty lead who will lead us through the masterclass very shortly. The mission of the Brown School of Professional Studies is to expand the university's reach and impact around the world by giving learners the capacity that you need to apply theory to practice for immediate impact in your workplaces and communities. So our programs are all hallmarks of all of our programs include accessibility. So things like these free master classes that only take an hour of your time, all the way to in-person programs that give you the ability to fully immerse. We have offerings along that full spectrum. And then in addition, another hallmark of our programs is that immediate applicability. We know you're busy. You can't wait for your learnings to have an impact on your life, your career, and your communities. And so we design all of our programs to have immediate takeaways that you can use today. And our portfolio is an expansive one, and it's ever expanding. We offer 33 professional and early career masters, ranging in a whole wide variety of topics for those of you who may be looking to take the next step in your career and specifically focus on getting an advanced degree. And in addition, 3 of those are executive level programs. The EMBA program, our Masters of Healthcare Leadership, and our Masters of Technology Leadership, and are designed for those of you who may be taking this on a part-time basis. And we have more in that program area that are coming out soon, so please be on the lookout for those. So I'm really excited. We have a Masters of Management program that's coming out soon and a Masters of Organizational Leadership program that's coming out as well. In addition, we have over 30 non-credit programs, including one specific to AI that I will talk about very briefly, that are short courses and certificates for those of you who are looking to learn a tangible skill, but not necessarily looking to commit to a full degree. And lastly, we can customize a program and bring it to you. So if you're the leader of a team or organization that are thinking about these really tough questions about the future of work and AI and good leadership practices, we would love to partner with you to bring your organization and team into the future. And so I want to really briefly ground us in what the research says about why AI fluency matters. As you may know about Brown University, we're nerds, we love research, and so we always look to see why these skills that we're teaching matter so much. And the numbers are really clear. According to PwC, AI's market potential is estimated to be between 1 to 2 trillion by 2030, meaning that there are huge career opportunities for those of you who want to either utilize AI or actually move into AI. Secondly, according to the Boston Consulting Group, 58% of employees said that they saved at least 5 hours per week using generative AI tools. And this survey was actually done a year ago. I bet that's changed quite a bit. In addition, according to Deloitte, 54% of employees believe that AI helped them to be more creative. And that really distinguishes this actually from other technology tectonic shifts that we've seen in the past, because typically technology makes things more accurate or more effective and efficient, but it's rare that it helps us to actually be more creative. So I think that's a really big shift that we're seeing. And perhaps most importantly for many of you on a call who have come here with, the lens of your own career progression on, 71% of executives say that they prefer hiring candidates with AI skills. So this is a crucial skill to future-proof your own career and in order to create the KPIs that you likely want at your organizations. But, and there is a huge but, according to Salesforce, 75% of workers distrust AI's data, and they have good reason to, and 68% are hesitant to adopt AI. And in addition, only 22% of respondents feel that their organizations are prepared to source or train talent to adopt AI effectively. So on the one hand of this picture, we're seeing how powerful it can be, how important it is to your career. And on the other end of the spectrum, we're seeing a lot of distrust, a lot of fear, a lot of nervousness, and not a lot of great training pathways to overcome that fear and resistance. And that is where I hope we come in. We would love to be your lifelong partner in mastering AI and leadership skills as you bring your organization and yourself into the next phase of what the modern workforce looks like. And so there's two pathways we'd love to offer. The first is that we have a full program. So for those of you who leave today and this is just the tip of the iceberg, you're really interested and you really want to join us for a full program, we would love to have you join us in our Applied AI and Data Science program. This program is a 12-week program. It is self-paced. It has projects along the way that have real world applications. So what I said at the beginning, we want you to have immediate results from every program you take with us. And this one will do that through the vise of these projects. Our faculty is incredible. His previous experience was working at Alphabet and Meta, and he's currently working at an AI startup. So he's really in this day in and day out. So he's going to bring a practitioner and professional lens to the course. And at the end of the program, you can earn a certificate of completion from Brown University in AI, which is a really hot topic, as we saw, because 71% of employers are looking for people with skills in that area. The curriculum focuses on things like how to prepare and analyze data effectively, how to prepare and train your model and apply deep learning techniques, how to use generative AI, and how to build machine learning models to enhance your decision-making processes. This is for those of you who are a bit more technical in the weeds in the data, but it's also for the managers of those folks who need a little bit more fluency in understanding the data that's being presented to them in order to make effective decisions. So we hope you'll choose to join us. I'll drop a link in the chat very shortly for the sign up. And we have signups actually, you could start as early as Monday if you would like. We'd love to have you be a part of it. And then the second way that you can master AI fluency with Brown is through this free masterclass, which I'm really excited that we get to offer today. And so I just want to request that if you have a question at any point, please type it as soon as you have it. Don't wait until the end, because typically we get a lot of questions, and it's helpful for me if I can kind of stack them and group them. So submit your question by clicking on the bottom bar of Zoom, clicking on the Q&A button, and typing and submitting your questions there. If you have a comment or you'd like to share resources with one another, you're welcome to do that as well, but do that in chat, not Q&A. So that is all I wanted to share before I get to do my favorite part of this, which is to introduce you to our true expert in this topic, Baba Prasad. Baba Prasad is the professor of the practice of leadership at Brown University, and he's an author and expert in the fields of strategic management, innovation, and leadership. He is known for his work on agile leadership, which we need desperately right now, and organizational agility. His notable works include the book Nimble, Make Yourself and Your Company Resilient in the Age of Constant Change. In Nimble, he integrates advances in theories of human intelligence and strategic leadership to arrive at a unique framework for executives and organizations to adapt and thrive in rapidly changing environments. And his engineering background comes in real handy when it comes to looking at robotics and artificial intelligence and management. We're so lucky that he comes with such a strong expertise on both the technology side and the leadership side because he has his degree from Wharton as well. So thank you so much for being here, Baba. Welcome, and I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, Alison. Are you able to see me?
I see you. I do not see the slides yet.
Great. Let me open up my share, the PowerPoint, and so I can share that. Great.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you from wherever you're joining. It's a dull, rainy day here in Rhode Island, and many people will say it's gloomy, but for me, it brings out the colors. And I think the same thing, the the metaphor kind of applies to AI. A lot of people are worried about AI, but there's also a lot of champions. There are also a lot of champions, and we're struggling to make sense of where we're going in this kind of disrupted world. So I'm going to lay out a bit of the AI from a kind of higher elevation than hands-on stuff, because this is a conceptual thing that I want you to go away thinking about. How you would use AI in the workplace, what kind of implications does AI bring to you, what kinds of changes to your role as a leader AI will make you go through. Okay, so here's the stuff. I would really like to focus on three things, 3 points here that you would take away from this webinar. One is the idea of five agilities. I don't talk of agility in the singular, and we'll go through a little bit of this. It was actually the core, and Alison read the intro, and she talked about the book Nimble. And so five agilities framework was developed in that book, but that book came much before the AI age. And so what are the challenges to that? So some of you have attended my previous master classes where I've talked about the five agilities, but I will go over that for those who have not attended those classes and are not familiar with it. I'll just introduce that framework through some examples. And then the second point is, what can AI do to leaders and organizations in terms of these five agilities? So which of these agilities does it enhance? Which of these agilities are still humans still need to be involved in? And finally, the third point, as AI comes into the workplace, what kinds of roles do leaders have to take on? What is different from before? What kind of challenges come up for leaders with AI? So this is the 3-point structure that I will have for the talk today. Well, first, we know that it's a turbulent world. Okay, that everywhere you see lots of change coming at you from every side. Competition, transient technologies. Technologies come and go. 2 years ago, we didn't know about generative AI, but here we are talking about it in every breath. Globalization, and of course, government regulation and political instability. What kinds of customers come to you? Where do your workers go away? What kind of attrition rates do you see? All these add to the turbulence of today's world. And the deep seek, for instance, in the AI world itself, there can be tremendous disruption with one company, one small startup somewhere shaking up the entire AI industry and losing $1 trillion in the stock market at one shot. So we're seeing a very, very dramatically disruptive world, one in which turbulence kind of is a key. Okay. And one can look at it from inside or from the outside. So when you look at it from the outside, the external world, you will see these two acronyms are things that you hear often: VUCA on the left and BANI on the right. VUCA is basically an acronym for volatile circumstances, uncertainty all over, complex kind of connections between cause and effect, and again, ambiguous about what will happen. So if you do this, will something happen? You're very ambiguous about it. So that's the kind of the untrustworthy external world. And within the inside, these conditions cause it from an experiential perspective. Uh, People to be, the organizations to be brittle, people to be anxious. You don't know how something scale up. Is there a nonlinear kind of impact of something that you do? And overall, there's an air of incomprehensibility, right? So this is an anxious kind of environment. So there are these two things that are always going to come up. So it's a turbulent world. So things seem kind of unmanageable, unpredictable. How do we actually deal with such a world? Is the question. So that's a little bit on the pessimistic side, but the good thing, and this is the positive thing, is that turbulence is not new for us. If you go back into the history of humanity, over the millennia, we've faced turbulence and we've responded and we've overcome turbulence. Okay, and human survival is basically about intelligence responding to uncertainty. And I'll give you some examples. To go down recorded history, of course, we have many stories in the Greek myths, in the in the Indian myths, in Norse myths. So mythology is full of these uh, dealing with turbulence kind of stories. But if we go back in recorded history, about 11,000, 13,000 years ago, Ice Age in India, in the US, North American continent, the first humans enter the North American continent, and they're faced with very little food, but there are these giant mammoths that they have to kill for food, and the predators like saber-toothed tigers around. So how do they survive? So, basically they come up with various kinds of tools. The special invention is something called a Clovis spearhead. These people were called the Clovis people. And there's this spearheads have been found in fossils, which have special kinds of edges that made them fly faster through the air and penetrate deeply into the prey. Okay? And they also worked in teams. So they were able to use, hunt together, and you share food as a community, so you survive. So now today we have humans on the North American continent, but no woolly mammoths and no saber-toothed tiger. Okay, now going further, closer to us in history, in the second century AD, for instance, in South India, in the Chola kings, and these are just representative examples. You'll find these kinds of examples all over the world. Okay? The Chola kings had a massive problem. There was this huge river called the Kaveri, which was flowing in South India, but it would flood or it would cause famine when it was summer. So they had to find a way to manage this irrigation, and so they came up with a what is today called frugal innovation, very simple structure built with sticks and stones across the river, which would not dam the river, so that because you won't have to handle that huge amount of water, but what it would do is break up the river into smaller rivulets, and those rivulets could be more easily managed. So we've come up with such problem. Handling climate change was done even back then in the second century AD. And then Chinese navigators in the 10th century. So the rough China seas, very difficult, turbulent ocean. How do you actually manage this? So Chinese came up with a very nice design called the Zhong, today called the Junk, um, which had multiple sails, and these sails were like Venetian blinds. And the most important things, so the Venetian blinds could be lowered and raised very quickly, unlike a traditional sail, and you can just maneuver very quickly with it. But then the most important contribution they made was a rudder. Okay? And this is a very important navigational contribution. And so we know we've been handling turbulence all through. And of course, the industrial revolutions where you had machines replacing people, and railways and electricity coming in, each era kind of demanded a different kind of adaptation. And finally, of course, the internet and network effects that came in with the emergence of the internet in the late 90s. And suddenly you had an explosion of connectivity, and also your whole economic models changed because you were no longer thinking about a closed economic model, but now you had network effects. The more the people that belong to a system, the more valuable the system is. And of course, platform dynamics. Do you belong to a community of users or not? How exactly will you be forced into that user community? So as technologies become more stable, you have to get that technology. So these are network effects. These change the economic paradigms that we worked with. Okay? And now we through all this stuff, when we sit back, so this is what I've been working on for the last 20 years, I've been fascinated by the concept of intelligence. I came to the US in 1988 to start a PhD in AI. So from 1986, when I got my master's in AI and robotics in India, I've been working on AI. And we went through what is called a winter of AI in the early 90s, when there was a lot of stuff that was going on in AI at that time, and suddenly funds dwindled and AI research just collapsed. And now we see a resurgence. So we have gone through these winters. But the problem is that when we see an AI, kind of model, the question that comes up to us is, what is the interaction between AI and human intelligence? And the reason I bring up human intelligence here is that my research for about 20, 25 years, which led to the book Nimble, I found that the driver of adaptation, the driver of agility, is human intelligence. So you have measures like IQ coming in and multiple intelligences. But really speaking, IQ is deemed to be kind of a not so good standard because it doesn't account for lots of variations among people. But really, multiple intelligences has become a very strong thing, that people are differently intelligent. And so when you're forming teams, for instance, if you have multiple people from different intelligences forming a team together, the team is much stronger. Um, and of course, emotional intelligence, which is one of the multiple intelligences, has become a big thing. Okay, so taking these, I went into my research, and when I wrote this book, it came. I discovered that there are 5 different agilities that are driven by intelligence, and these are analytical. So this is a quick summary of for those who are new to this subject, that the 5 agilities are analytical agility, operational agility, inventive agility, communicative agility, and visionary agility. Now, just a brief word about this. Now, when I say analytical agility, it is not the ability to do analysis, it is the ability to shift between different kinds of analysis. So, for instance, you're justifying an investment project in a one particular kind of way. Maybe you use a net present value, but is there a different way to do that? Because this project is different, it has network dynamics, it has kind of unpredictable returns. So how would you do that? Then maybe you will think of options kind of thinking that you bring from financial methodology. So there must be a way to shift between these different kinds of analytical approaches. Do you have that ability? Then you have analytical agility. Operational agility is very common. We know that. Can I do the same thing in different ways? Somebody doesn't come to work, a machine breaks down, a particular route is blocked. So can I still run my operations? And inventive agility is, of course, you don't know a solution. There's no solution. Nobody has a solution right now. Can I create a new product, or can I do this in a different way? Can I create a new process for this? Okay. Communicative agility is the ability to collaborate and persuade through different means. So these are the 4 different agilities that actually allow you to react to a circumstance. But then there's a 5th, which I found out later, which is called visionary agility, which transforms this reactive response into something strategic. What it does is, each agility contributes to a particular solution, it asks, is this solution valid in the long run? Is it Will it exist beyond the here and now? Will it allow me to think beyond me and company, not just be selfish in my approach? So it both widens the perspective and also deepens the perspective. So visionary agility is like the Chinese rudder, that came in. It's not enough to just tack to the winds by moderating your sail, but you need to give it direction. You need to give it purpose. And so visionary agility comes in. So this transforms reactive response into strategic response. So you're responding quickly, but also wisely. Okay? So these are the 5 different agilities. And what I'm going to do in this talk is think about these 5 agilities that we need for organizations and say, where can AI come in? Which ones of these can AI enhance? Where can AI, right currently at least, not what can AI currently not do? And where would we need to integrate humans and AI? There's some things that are different about AI turbulence. So we've been talking about turbulence and the change, that technology brings, but there's something different with AI, because any of you who's used ChatGPT to generate some thoughts, I'm sure that you would have been overwhelmed with the volume of thoughts that ChatGPT puts out so quickly. It it takes a long while to absorb what it has put out. So speed of AI is exceeding human cognition. So that's one kind of danger that we're seeing. The second is AI scales across industries. So it's not restricted to one particular industry. It can move across industries, and it can account for various kinds of things in various industries. So scaling is kind of instant. Okay. And intelligence now becomes hybrid. Till now, technology was just a tool that humans would use, but AI tries to mimic what is quintessentially human, right? Intelligence. That's our species derives its names Homo sapiens because of that intelligence. And now we are having to renege some part of it to AI. And so there's a kind of tension that's happening there. What can we let go of our intelligence to some machine, and what do we retain? And so we'll talk a little bit about that here. As I already said, the deep seek disruption is kind of a example of this. How a small thing could shake up $1 trillion within a large industry. Okay. Now, what happens with this with AI? So one of the big overview thoughts that we have is that one thing that AI does is expands capability, but it does not give purpose. Why it is doing what it's doing, it won't be able to explain, and that's where the humans come in. Okay. So as of now, humans have to decide the direction of the company. They have to think about the ethics, and not just ethics within the system. So when we talk about AI and ethics, a common thing and an important thing is that we see, is the system causing biases or enhancing biases? Is it, like, for instance, in a resume kind of review, does it put out only certain kind of people and not and not put up other kind of people? So that's an ethics kind of problem. What about you know the other larger ethics? So for instance, when we think about AI, are we thinking about the environmental impact of AI? Are we thinking about what kind of thing it will do for the climate? What will it do for people? Which kinds of people will it, just like we had the internet gap, what kind of gaps will come up between societies with AI? So these are things that are bigger ethical concerns, and that's where the humanities, especially at Brown, come in to play a big picture to talk about these kinds of problems that are not being seen at today. In fact, in the Wall Street Journal, there was a very interesting report about what CEOs are thinking about AI, and it was surprising to me, at least, that they're still caught up within the organizational context of how do we drive efficiency from AI, and we're not thinking about the big picture. Okay. And so ethics and meaning, these are very important for us to bring in to AI thinking. So what agilities? So coming back to my framework of 5 agilities. So what agilities can AI enhance? Well, it enhances analytical and operational agility because it can automate and it can do pattern recognition. Okay. Now, this is a problem that we saw in the 90s, and I came to do my PhD in computer vision. We were very good. We were working on pattern recognition, which is still the hotbed of AI, which is how AI systems work today. And we got to the point of saying, okay, a computer can recognize a chair, but how do we make the computer understand the meaning of the chair? If I ask a person to change a light bulb in a room, and that person looks around and finds only a chair, that person will use the chair to stand on and change the light bulb. That kind of contextual knowledge was very difficult to give to AI. And I think even today we will struggle with that. So, except that the context has changed, what kind of contextual knowledge? And so, what happened then was we ran into a wall, and that's when people began to see that AI can only do certain kinds of things, analytical and operational. So, the notion of general intelligence, which was being claimed, was kind of false. And so AI went the first AI, second AI went. The first one was in 50s, 60s, when we struggled with pattern recognition itself then. So this is, I'm waiting to see what kind of block we will hit here. But as of now, we can safely say that AI will amplify the analytical and operational agilities of the organization. And how will it do that? Well, pattern recognition for analytical agility, probabilistic reasoning, very quickly it can do that, and model generation at scale. So these are things that very interesting assets to any company in terms of analytical capabilities. And it can move between different kinds of, and it can do different kinds of analysis and show you that these are, possibilities with this analysis. So that, there's no two ways about it, that analytical agility is definitely powered by AI. Similarly, operational agility. And if we're talking about efficiencies, replacing people, etc., but those are all concerned with automated, kind of processes where there are repetitive workflows. We're talking about optimization and dynamic routing. So these are questions that are, very easily and devoid of human reasoning. Really, you don't have to have human reasoning to do. Machines can do this. So operational agility is definitely powered by AI. And the concern for me is that most CEOs are still stuck in this, trying to see AI as being efficiency oriented, whereas we should be talking more about effectiveness of AI. Okay. Inventive agility is where the border starts to blur. Okay. That certain parts of agility, certain parts of invention, AI can do. It can produce new products, new designs, new art, suggest some things. But we need to contextualize this and we need to give the meaning. What would be a good thing to take to the market? What would be ethical to take to the market? And typically in any kind of new product thinking, there are two forces. Any product is caught between two forces. One is the technology, and the other is the market. Okay? And what happens then is that technology often drives the market, okay? Often drives the product, and so engineers who are trying to do some stuff will be evangelists for their product, but really the market doesn't need it. And very rarely do you find visionaries like Steve Jobs who will find that the market doesn't is not aware of a product that can be made, and so the iPhone emerges there. So those kinds of things are difficult here, but still we need human intervention here in between these two. And where right now, where we see a lot of human interaction is in the communicative and visionary agilities. Okay? These require imagination, meaning, and ethics. Okay? I'll give you a very quick example of this. So, for instance, I can ask AI to generate, let's say I'm making something that helps baldness, okay, helps alleviate baldness. I'm making a hair cream that alleviates baldness, and I ask AI to generate a before and after picture. Okay? And AI can generate this for me. Okay, so before and after. Now, there's nothing wrong with this if we are in a culture that reads left to right. But imagine that you take this to a culture that reads right to left. So the before and after will change meaning. So how do you make sure? AI can't make sure of that. So you need to be thinking about this. It's a very simple, quick example, but it's an illustrative example, right? Because it brings home the idea of context. And that context is very difficult for AI to do right now. It requires a lot of human intervention. Okay. So in the visionary agility, especially where I'm seeing this, and as I said before, we're needing a lot of people, we're needing a lot of human effort to think about purpose, to think about what boundaries can we draw between, what we can do and what we should do. Okay. And where are the values coming from? So what kind of values? So, okay, we say customer-centric values, but what does that mean? What do we say employee-centric values, but what do they mean, right? And how do we bring that into the picture for when we're talking about AI? This is a big question. And so as long as these issues are concerned, we will not be able to eliminate the humans from the AI picture. Okay. So in a leader, so what happens? So this is the context of what AI can do in terms of the agilities, what AI can do in the organization. But now what happens to leadership in an AI world? What kinds of things are leaders called on to do suddenly? So now we have a situation where we don't have just human intelligence, but we also have machine intelligence. And so this hybrid intelligence of human plus machine is the world in which today's business leaders work in. Okay. And so what kind of responsibilities emerge for them? In fact, I see three different kind of responsibilities. And most of you know that with AI, AI is not a foolproof, does not do a foolproof job, right? What it does is it gives you certain solutions, but then it calls on you to interpret those solutions, so to translate that AI, as I said, with the visionary thing into in strategic meaning, but also in more mundane tasks. For instance, take Stitch Fix. Okay, Stitch Fix is a company which uses AI to create a lot of it uses a lot of data from the customer and says, okay, this customer has these preferences, and then these are the things, styles that they like. It uses a lot of you know data from the that customers have input, and it looks at trends. It takes a lot of data from external sources. And what it does is it comes up with, let's say, 30 designs for a customer who's asking for a particular kind of style of dress. Okay. But what Stitch Fix has found is that it's not, and it rank orders them. So it's not enough for us to just take that rank order and produce number one for that, rank order number one for that particular customer. What they found is that often you need a human stylist. In fact, all the time, they made it a thing that the 30 styles suggested by the algorithm are vetted by a human stylist who looks at contextual data. For instance, a customer may have put in, I'm going to a graduation party and I need to have, something that does X or Y. And then the human stylists actually bring in more empathy, more, more human interpretation to it, what kinds of needs would be done. And maybe they will move, rank order number five to rank order one and suggest that. And in fact, also add to that saying, perhaps a scarf of this style will accompanying this would be better for this. So this is how they're actually interpreting it. So the role of the business leader is not just to take those AI insights and apply them, in a blind way, but actually take that and talk about strategic meaning. What does this really mean? What should we be doing to get maximum effect from the AI thing? So it's a very interesting dynamic between the intelligence of the machine and the intelligence of humans. The challenger, okay, now this we see a lot, especially with hallucination, and although future versions of the of AI engines are generative AI, models are going to be more more aware of how they're hallucinating and reduce that risk of hallucination, where they're producing fictional data. For instance, you want to write a paper and you ask for some references, it can cook up some references. So how do you determine that? So when you have to be careful. So that's why, as one of the roles of a leader, is to be a challenger with AI. When AI suggests something, you do a double check on it and you actually challenge AI, push back against it when the recommendations misalign. So, for instance, also when those recommendations are causing certain ethical concerns. So, for instance, Salesforce rejected AI when it was doing some predictive policing, right? Or somebody who would actually, an AI system was being used to do certain monitoring of people within the organization about how much time they're taking off, how much time they're spending on the call, on their personal calls, and so kind of monitoring and policing this. So Salesforce kind of rejected um, that order. Okay. Um, the steward, the third role for the, so we did the interpreter, we did the challenger, and then the third role that I see for organizations, for business leaders, is that they should take on the role of stewards, okay, which is basically talking about governing AI responsibly. So we're bringing in AI, but what role does it have in the organization? How much do we rely on it? When do we not rely on it? What are the policies that we lay out? These are things that are responsible, thinking about AI. So we need to put in place that. So as a leader of the organization or a leader of a team, you have the responsibility to do that. Okay. So, which means that you have to think about issues like transparency, you need to think about ethics, you need to think about accountability. Something fails, will you just say that the machine failed or will you say the people failed? How do you account for that? Where do you, who would you hold responsible? These are things that the steward does. So, these are three different roles that are coming up. And as we think about orchestrating hybrid intelligence, two things are very clear, and then the mix becomes something that's very individual and context sensitive, which is the first thing is that AI does enhance speed and scale. There is no doubt about it. That does a lot more in a shorter time, and it's also able to scale up as it does this. So now the second part is that creativity, purpose, morality, ethics, and empathy, sensitivity, all these which are quintessentially human are still in the human domain. And the challenge then becomes for us as leaders to say, how do we mix these two? How do we enhance speed and not be trapped in just the, what Peter Drucker used to say, turbulence is not the problem. It's old ways of doing and handling turbulence that's the problem. Okay. So what new ways should we be determining? So how do we combine these things, creativity, purpose, morality, ethics, etc., with speed and scale that AI brings? So how do we generate this? So these are all what I feel is that these are all individually uh, oriented, that each leader will have to come up with these things according to their context. And so while AI does enhance speed and scale and efficiency, there's also a question of effectiveness that comes in because humans provide that guiding light. Um, yeah, so there are various things like if you're facing an AI disruptor, what would you do? Here, the focus becomes more on agility, not so much on what the AI can do or the function itself, but can we quickly move? Can we move from this to that? What kind of leverage do we have within the organization because of the agilities that we have? And the leadership role is basically about guiding organizational response to this, so to do it in a way that's not just reactive but also strategic. So new leadership agenda is basically this, that you disclose, diagnose, and find out where your company is lacking or strong in agility, where are the gaps, where are the strengths, and take that agility gap and assign leadership roles for that, build kind of synergies between the leadership role and particular kind of agility, and culturally reinforce the fact that we are now in a hybrid environment where we need to be thinking about both machine and organizational intelligence and how we go forward from that. Yeah. Key takeaways. First thing, as I've been saying, is that AI is not a replacement for human intelligence. We have to face it. Our human brains have been firing for billions of years and billions of neurons, and they have generated certain kind of learnings in the system, and that can't be replaced very quickly by AI. So although we talk a lot about AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, I think we're still a long way away from that. And until then, as leaders, as business leaders, we should be thinking about how to integrate these two as in a wider framework, thinking about not just the efficiency aspect, not just the short term, but thinking about the long term impact, what kind of societal impacts we will have, what kind of environmental impacts will we have, and beyond us and the company, of course, and also within the organization, what kind of impacts will it have on my people? What kind of impacts will it have on my customers? So thinking about this in a larger framework, um, we will, as humans, be at the center of that. And one other key thing that I want to say is often people ask if you're talking about multiple intelligences and multiple agilities, are they the same? I see intelligence as a capability and agility as the expression of that capability. So intelligence is the expression of agility is the expression of that intelligence. And leadership is, of course, as I said, the big charge for leaders today is to think about how we can live in a hybrid world and how we can take challenges on and how do we modify our own leadership roles given that. Okay. So I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, Bava. And we do have a couple questions that have already come in, so we'll start with those. But I also just want to remind this group that if you do have a question, please submit it now by clicking on the bottom bar of Zoom, clicking on Q&A, and typing and submitting your questions there. The first question that we have for you, Baba, is what assurances exist to ensure that ethical standards are maintained when applying AI?
Well, we had something called the AI Charter, human rights, AI rights charter, but that was revamped with the new administration, the Trump administration. There is still a European Bill of Rights, AI Bill of Rights. So that does something that provides certain guidelines. Very interestingly, today I wrote a LinkedIn post on the story of Odysseus from Greek mythology, where he's facing sirens, which is a sign of turbulence, And we could think of AI as being a siren. So then, how do you actually account for that? How do you not fall into temptation? And that's where I believe that, the analogy of Odysseus tying himself to a mast is very important. Although there may be guidelines elsewhere, what are the masks that we have built within the organization, within ourselves, for ourselves? And as I said, everything is context sensitive. So what applies for one organization, one business leader may not apply to another business leader or an organization. So how do we find those masks? That's a challenge that we need to think about. Find those masks that we can bind ourselves to and not rely only on these general guidelines, which all of which will have some loophole or the other.
Thank you so much. That's such a great metaphor. And I love too when we're able to bring in, and you do such a great job with this, bring in like those timeless lessons to apply to new technology, because I think it's really important for us to see like the through line of what hasn't changed as well as what has. And I also just want to note for the group that I put a link in the chat to the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights that Baba mentioned. One of our own faculty members in the Department of Data Science and Computer Science helped to draft it. So it is one of our favorites here at Brown, even though it is not currently in practice, as you mentioned, but I still agree with you that I think it gives a really great framework for people who may be asking this question for their own organizations or teams or places where we have a little bit more individual level control. And the next question that came in was, which agility gaps do you most often see in organizations, and how do leaders close them without slowing their execution?
Yeah, it's the agility gaps are usually, I've seen a lot, not just in terms of gaps from a lack of agility. They may be overdoing certain agilities. So, for instance, I've seen people investing a lot in innovation when they don't need to. And so those things can actually be addressed. So there is, as I said, there's no game plan. So this is where our, you know, kind of we have to get into as consultants and help the organizations think about which gaps to close and which ones. And these are all very, very predicated on what market they are, what kind of environment they're facing, what is their internal resources, what are their internal resources, and how do you actually fill the gaps there. There may be resources. So, for instance, very big companies have collapsed. I mean, we have examples of in the film industry which didn't cope with the camera phone, right? Kodak and Polaroid all collapsed because they didn't, although they were very big and had lots of resources, they didn't have the agility to cope with the iPhone or the camera phone. Same thing with with mini computer industries in the 1990s again, when the Sun Microsystems came in as desktop systems, they couldn't face that and they all collapsed. So idea of which agilities are very contextual. I've seen everything across the board, from not being able to do things efficiently, where you're seeing operational agility gaps, to R&D gaps, where you're not investing enough in innovation. So, you see them all over, and I've not seen any pattern as such, that one is more than the other. But where I always see is that agility, we tend, when I started the framework, I only had the four agilities: inventive, operational, analytical, and communicative. And I didn't think about the visionary till some companies that I was modeling as exemplars of agility collapsed, and all because they lacked the visionary agility. And so that, I think, is a very difficult thing to develop. But once you get into the practice, it's easy to think about the strategic dimensions of what your reactions are.
Thank you. That's such a great insight and so interesting to hear how your model has changed over the years as well. So thank you for that. The next question is, what developments do you expect in AI over the next 5 years? And what should we begin preparing for or adapting to now?
It's an interesting question. I don't think I have the ability to talk about the the future in a very, very rapidly evolving world. I mean, 2 years, 2.5 years ago, we wouldn't have thought Gen AI, generative AI, could be so much in our lives, but it is, right? And so, but to hazard a risk here, a guess here, I would say that we will become more aware of ethical boundaries. But even as I say that, and then that we will start to think about certain things being built within the system itself to account for those guidelines, that I was talking about. But even as I say that, we have talk of OpenAI opening up erotic stuff, okay, for adults, responsible adults as they call them. But you know where the boundaries are. So there are no real limits to that. So I'm hesitant to say which way it will go. Very difficult to predict right now. But that's where the agility comes in. So are you prepared to go whichever way the world goes? So are you able to handle those? So I would believe rather than predicting the trends, to be able to actually build capabilities to handle uncertain futures.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And that really leads very nicely into this next question, which is that many companies seem to be struggling to integrate AI into their operations and culture. What is the best way that leaders can bring people along into this age of AI?
Yeah, very, very relevant question, I think.
Mhm.
It is a question. This is where I think the communicative agility comes in. Okay. Are you building ways in which your entire company can collaborate? In fact, what today's Wall Street CEO's article about the CEOs said was they're having resistance in certain parts of the organization and enthusiasts in other parts of the organization. And so there is a kind of a lopsided adaptation to AI within their organizations. And so the challenge there is to have communicative intelligence, communicative agility, where you start to think about, how can we expand this across the organization? What kind of platforms do we need to do this? What kind of persuasion do we need to bring in here? Are we actually making them, one of the big issues why people resist AI is because they think their job is going to be replaced. So how can we actually help them overcome that fear? Or if we are replacing them, how can we be candid about that? Right. So these are
Mhm.
things that there has to be a very strong communication strategy within the organization to do that. And again, as I said, it's very contextual. And this is one of the key things that we should move away from technology, because technology gives us templates. I can bring in a system and plug it in, but that's not the way it works in organizations when we think about agilities, when we think about strategy. You can't plug in certain things. You need to be contextualizing it. And how you will develop that game plan is very, very individual to the organization and to the culture.
Thank you. One question came in that was about education specifically, and I did look at our sign up list in advance, and we have quite a few people who are in the education industry. So I wanted to ask you, how do you see leaders in education using AI to help support teachers in the classroom, but using it ethically? How can we support classroom learning and management, especially during discussions of sensitive topics?
Yeah, it is a very difficult question. In fact, as educators, my wife and I struggle with this every day. Has this person used ChatGPT to write a response to our class paper? Um, so it's kind of difficult to kind of lay out a game plan here. But what I'm suggesting is that perhaps we can be more open. Students will use ChatGPT, so, but then can we help them think about what the meanings are? So, one of the things that we have said is, if you're using ChatGPT, please tell us you use ChatGPT, and now please critique what ChatGPT gave you. So that makes them, think twice about using ChatGPT, because the critiquing is, I think, more difficult than the actual writing of the original essay. So this is becoming a way to do this. But as you think about AI from a education perspective, there's a tremendous potential to it, that you can actually bring a lot of stuff, lot of the benefits of AI to education. But again, we need to be thinking about the guardrails that we build around that. What kind of um, issues can we think about? Sensitive topics, again, yeah, what kind of topics can be discussed and cannot be discussed. Again, right now, there's no unified kind of thinking about this. Everybody is like groping in the dark, and it's like the six blind men and the elephant. Somebody touches a side and says the elephant is like a wall, and somebody touches a trunk and says it's like a serpent, and so what. It's all right now. So we are at a very, very interesting time, I think, where all this is evolving. But I do see a lot of potential for AI in education.
Thank you. I'm also seeing a lot of comments, actually, both in the chat and the Q&A, that's expressing a lot of anxiety about future unemployment trends. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to what the research is showing about which sectors will be most impacted by being replaced or, having at least the opportunity downsized through AI, and also what we as leaders can do to help create more of that culture of collaboration that you've really described, where like both sides thrive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the key things that AI, as we saw in this presentation, is, and my own research is showing, is that routine tasks are very easily replaced by AI today. Um, where it gets a little more dicey is when you have things that are essentially human, for instance, collaboration, for instance, communication with others, bringing in more of the empathy angle. Those are difficult to replace. Okay? Now, when it comes to that, so as employees, one should be aware of what is routine in our tasks and what is not. Okay, and so enhance the not routine stuff and bring value to that. And as employers, they should be able to actually work with that. That we can be a much more efficient, but we can also be a more empathetic company. That we don't need to throw out people like what we did in re-engineering the workplace, kind of in the mid 90s, that we went through, where we just made everything efficient, cut down processes, and threw people out. That should not be the way to go, because it hurts you in the long run. Okay? So how do you retool your employees? Have a game plan for retooling your employees to work with AI, but also enhance AI. No, it's not just AI enhancing our work, but are we enhancing AI as with our values?
Thank you. That's great. Oh, quick clarifying question, and then I'll move into the last question. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but the quick clarifying question first is, would you repeat one more time the distinction you made between intelligence and agility?
Yeah. So intelligence for me is a capability that exists within us. And agility is when that intelligence gets expressed in action. So um, it's like, I have the capability to do this, but I'm not doing it yet. So I actually express that in terms of agility. So I actually change my operations. That's agility. I actually, change my communication patterns. That's agility. So when I have those abilities expressed actually in certain policies and certain actions, that's where I would call it agility within the organization.
Thank you so much.
Intelligence then is the driver of that agility in some sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And then this seems like a really nice, hopeful note to end on, which is, what are you most excited about that AI is going to bring to leaders?
What I'm thinking is that, in a very contradictory fashion, AI will make us more human.
Hmm.
Because that film, I forget which one, but to paraphrase that, one can say, all those who are dealing with AI can say that I have seen the face of AI and it is not us. Okay. So that aspect of human thing, that something that's human that can't be replaced by AI right now, at least, is something that will become enhanced. And that's my, the positive thing that I take away from AI. Not that AI can do this or AI can do that or can't do this or can't do that. It's just that the human aspect will become more enhanced. Perhaps will become more empathetic leaders, will become more thoughtful leaders, that will become more less profit-oriented leaders. So, I mean, profit orientation is a good thing, but not to be the sole goal of a company. So that's where I think AI, that's like my hope for AI.
Thank you so much. That is such a hopeful note to end on. And I also want to thank everyone for being here today. I know you're really busy too, and you chose to take time out of your day to learn about this topic that is incredibly beneficial to us individually in our careers and our sectors, but also comes with a lot of like challenges and fears um and yeah, new things to navigate. So thank you so much for being here today and for asking such thoughtful questions. I hope that if you would like to continue to learn more with us, that you will join us for our next Applied AI and Data Science program. We would love to have you in it. And we will continue to offer these free masterclasses as well. And they will often, I think, be on topics of AI because it is such a pressing topic. So you'll see Bava again. Thank you so much, Bava, for being here. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you all. Wonderful talking to you guys.